let's talk about these paintings really quickly. So, a lot of these paintings do represent civilized, what is known as like civilized society. Uh oh, I don't know what fell over there. Um, I'm kind of like looking at these paintings and I'm trying to decide like where I should start. I'll just read some of them out. So this is Luis de Mena, Virgin of Guadalupe. The Casta painting shows 16 hierarchically arranged mixed race groupings, with Indios Merca set outside of the orderly set of civilized society, a Spanish father and an Albina mother. Born of the Spaniard in India is the mestizo, who is generally humble, tranquil, and straightforward. So they're trying to classify characteristics by how you look, as if that's possible. Um, this is literally like racism. Artwork created by mainly in the 18th century Mexico purports to show race mixture as a hierarchy. These paintings have had tremendous influence on how scholars have approached difference in the colonial era, but should not be taken as a definitive description of racial difference. For approximately a century, Costa paintings were by elite artists from an elite viewership. They ceased to be produced following Mexico's independence in 1821 when Costa designations were abolished. The vast majority of Costa paintings were produced in Mexico by a variety of artists with a single group of canvases clearly identified for 18th century Peru. In the colonial era, artists primarily created religious art and portraits, but in the 18th century, Costa paintings emerged as a completely secular genre of art. An exception to that is the painting by Luis de Mena, a single canvas that has the central figure of the Virgin of Guadalupe and set of Costa groupings. Most sets of Costa paintings have 16 separate canvases, but a few, such as Mena's Ignacio Maria Barrera and the anonymous paintings in the Museo de Virianato in Tebazotlan, Mexico, are frequently produced as examples of the genre, likely because their composition gives a single tidy image of their racial classification from the elite viewpoint. It is unclear why Costa paintings emerged as a genre, why they became such a popular genre of artwork, who commissioned them, and who collected them. One scholar suggests they can be seen as proud renditions of the local, a point when American born Spaniards began forming a clear identification with their place of birth rather than metropolitan Spain. The single canvas Costa artwork could well have been a curiosity or souvenir for Spaniards to take home to Spain. Two frequently reproduced Costa paintings were Mena and Berea's, both of which were in Madrid museums. There is only one set of Costa paintings definitively done in Peru, commissioned by Viceroy Manuel Amat y Junet and sent to Spain for the Cabinet of Natural History of the Prince of Asturias. The influence of European Enlightenment on the Spanish Empire led to an interest in organizing knowledge and scientific description, might have resulted in the commission of many series of pictures that documented the racial combinations that existed in Spanish territories in the Americas. Many sets of these paintings still exist, around 100 complete sets in museums and private collections, and more individual paintings of varying artistic quality, usually consisting of 16 paintings representing as many racial combinations. It must be emphasized that these paintings reflected in the views of the economically established Criollo society and officialdom, but not all Criollos were pleased with Costa paintings. One remarked that they showed what harms us and what benefits us, what dishonors us and what ennobles us. Many paintings are in Spain in major museums, but many remain in private collections in Mexico, perhaps commissioned and kept because they show the character of the late colonial Mexico and a source of pride. Some of the finer sets were done by prominent Mexican artists. One of Magon's sets includes descriptions of the character and moral standing of his subjects. These artists sparked together in the painting guilds of New Spain. They were important transitional artists in 18th century Casta painting. At least one Spaniard, Francisco Clapera, also contributed to the Casta genre. In general, little is known of most artists who did not sign their work. Most Casta paintings are unsigned. Huh. If the Wait, let's go back for a second. Certain authors have interpreted the overall theme of these paintings as representing the supremacy of the Spaniards. The possibility that mixtures of Spaniards and Spanish Indian offspring could return the status of Spaniards through marriage to Spaniards over generations. What can be considered restoration of racial purity or racial mending was seen visually in many sets of Costa paintings. It was also articulated by a visitor to Mexico, Don Pedro Alonso O'Cruley, in 1774. If the mixed blood is the offspring of a Spaniard and an Indian, the stigma of race mixture disappears at the third step in descent because it is held as systematic that a Spaniard and Indian produced a mestizo. A mestizo and a Spaniard, a castizo, and a castizo and a Spaniard. The admixture of Indian blood should not indeed be regarded as a blemish, since the provisions of law give the Indian all that he could wish for, and Philip II granted to mestizos the privilege of becoming priests. On this consideration is based the common estimation of descent from a union of Indian and European or Creole Spaniard. O'Cruley says that the same process of restoration for racial purity does not occur over generations for European African offspring marrying whites. From the union of a Spaniard and a Negro, the mixed blood retains the stigma for generations without losing the original quality of a mulatto. Costa paintings show increasing whitening over generations with the mixes of Spaniards and Africans. The consequences is the offspring of a Spaniard and Negra mulatto, Spaniard with mulatta Morisco, Spaniard with a Morisca albino, a racial category derived from alba white, Spaniard with an albina torna atrás or throwback black. Negro, mulatto, and Morisco were labels found in colonial era documentation, but albino and torna atrás exist only as fairly standard categories in Costa paintings. In contrast, mixtures with black people, both by Indians and Spaniards, led to a bewildering number of combinations with fanciful terms to describe them. Instead of leading to a new racial type or equilibrium, they led to apparent disorder. Terms as the above-mentioned tente and el aire, floating in mid-air, and no ten entiendo, I don't understand you, and others based on terms used for animals, coyote and lobo, wolf. Costa defined themselves in different ways, and how they were recorded in official records was a process of negotiation between the Costa and the person creating the document. Whether it was a birth certificate, a marriage certificate, or a court deposition in real life, many Costa individuals were assigned different racial categories in different documents, revealing the malleable nature of racial identity in colonial Spanish American society. Some paintings depicted the supposed innate character and quality of people because of their birth and ethnic origin. For example, according to one painting by Jose Juan Margan, the mestizo, mixed Indian and Spanish, was considered generally humble, tranquil, and straightforward, while another painting claims from Lobo, an Indian woman is born the Kumbuhu, one usually slow, lazy, and cumbersome. Ultimately, the Costa paintings are reminders of the colonial biases in modern human history that link to caste, ethnic society, based on decent skin color, social status, and one's birth. Often, Costa paintings depicted commodity items from Latin America like pulque, the fermented alcohol drink of the lower classes, Painters depicted interpretations of Polk that were attributed to specific castas. The Indians in Casta paintings depict them as partners to Spaniards, black people in castas, and thus part of Hispanic society. But in a number of Casta paintings, they are also shown apart from civilized society, such as Miguel Cabrera's Indos Gentiles or Indido Barbaros or Chichimecas, barely clothed indigenous in a wild setting. In the single canvas painting by Jose Maria Barrera, there are a canonical 16 Casta groupings, and then in a separate cell below are Mecos. Although the so called barbarian Indians were fierce warriors on horseback, Indios in Casta paintings were not shown as bellicose, but as weak, a trope that developed in the colonial era. A Casta painting by Luis de Mena that is often reproduced as an example of the genre shows an unusual couple with a pale, well-dressed Spanish woman paired with a nearly naked Indio, producing a mestizo offspring. The aberrant combination not only mocks social protocol, but also seems to underscore the very artificiality of a Casta system that pretends to circumscribe social fluidity and economic mobility. The image would have seemed frankly bizarre and offensive by 18th century Creole elites if taken literally, but if the pair were considered allegorical figures, the Spanish woman represents Europe and the Indio America. The image functions as an allegory for the civilizing and Christianizing process. Wow. Guadalupe and the Costas. That's fascinating.